Sometimes the most important person you'll ever carry is the one you almost walked past. Nathan Brooks would remember those words for the rest of his life, although on that freezing December afternoon, he had no idea how true they would become. The wind swept across the hospital parking lot outside St. Mary's Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio, carrying dry leaves along the pavement. Gray clouds covered the sky, promising snow before nightfall. Nathan pulled the zipper of his worn navy winter jacket a little higher before opening the passenger door of his aging pickup truck. "Did the doctor say I'm getting stronger?" Lily asked, carefully climbing into her seat. Nathan smiled as he helped fasten her seat belt. "He sure did. Your knee is healing exactly the way he hoped." The 9-year-old grinned, brushing a strand of blonde hair beneath her knitted beanie. "Does that mean I'll play soccer again this spring? I think you'll be faster than before." She laughed, and for a brief moment, the weight Nathan had been carrying for months felt lighter. Ever since his divorce, every dollar mattered. His mobile physical therapy business had lost several contracts earlier that year, and today's job interview at a private rehabilitation clinic represented more than another paycheck. It was the opportunity that could finally give Lily the stable childhood she deserved. He glanced at the dashboard clock. 43 minutes. If traffic stayed light, he'd arrive just in time. Nathan climbed behind the wheel and reached for the ignition. Then he heard it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a weak voice carried by the cold wind. "Please." Nathan froze. Another gust came. "Leave me." His eyes searched the nearly empty parking lot. Nothing. He shook his head, assuming he had imagined it. He turned the key halfway. Again. "I can't walk." This time Lily heard it too. "Dad." She looked toward the far corner of the parking structure. "I think someone needs help." Nathan followed her gaze. Near a concrete support column, partially hidden behind a black luxury sedan, a man was sitting on the icy ground. No. Not sitting anymore. He had collapsed against the concrete wall. His dark charcoal overcoat looked expensive, but it was covered with dirt. One leather glove lay several feet away. His silver hair was damp with melting snow, and one side of his body seemed strangely still. Nathan checked the dashboard clock again. 39 minutes. If he walked away now, nobody would ever know. Someone else would eventually find the man. Probably. "Dad?" Lily whispered again. Nathan stared silently through the windshield. He wasn't a paramedic. He wasn't on duty. He couldn't afford to miss this interview. Every practical thought told him to drive away. Every instinct he'd developed after 15 years of helping injured patients told him something far more frightening. The man wasn't simply tired. Something was terribly wrong. Nathan exhaled slowly. "Stay in the truck," he said. Without waiting for his own doubts to catch up with him, he stepped into the freezing wind and began running toward the stranger whose barely audible plea had already changed the course of all three of their lives. People rarely realize that a single decision can cost them everything before it gives them something they never expected. Nathan dropped to one knee beside the stranger. "Sir? Can you hear me?" The man's eyelids fluttered. His breathing was shallow, uneven. One side of his mouth sagged slightly, and his left arm remained motionless against the frozen pavement. Years of treating stroke patients rushed back into Nathan's mind. Facial droop. Arm weakness. Slurred speech. Time mattered. "I'm Nathan," he said calmly. "Don't try to move." The older man's lips trembled. "No, ambulance." Nathan leaned closer. "What?" "No, reporters." His voice was barely more than air. Nathan frowned. This wasn't the response of someone worried about medical bills. Who was this man? He slipped 2 fingers onto the stranger's wrist. The pulse was rapid but present. His skin felt ice cold. Behind him, Lily had quietly stepped out of the truck despite his instructions. "Dad? Stay back, sweetheart." "But he's shaking." Nathan looked over his shoulder. "Lily, grab my phone from the cup holder." She ran without another word. The stranger tried to lift his head. Please! His eyes searched Nathan's face with surprising desperation. Don't call! Nathan interrupted gently. I'm sorry. I don't have that choice. Lily hurried back, holding the phone with both hands. He unlocked it and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Nathan Brooks. I'm outside St. Mary's Medical Center, East parking lot. Male patient, late 50s. Possible stroke. Facial droop, slurred speech, limited movement on the left side. He's conscious but deteriorating. The dispatcher immediately began asking questions. Nathan answered each one while keeping his eyes on the patient. The older man's breathing became more labored. Snowflakes had started drifting from the dark sky. Tiny. Silent. Landing across the man's expensive overcoat. We have a unit on the way, the dispatcher said. Keep him warm. Don't let him stand. Nathan removed his own jacket without hesitation and laid it over the stranger's shoulders. The freezing air cut instantly through his sweater. Lily noticed. Dad, you'll be cold. I'll be fine. The dispatcher remained on the line. Is anyone else with you? My daughter. Good. Stay where you are. Nathan nodded even though she couldn't see him. The older man suddenly reached weakly toward his coat pocket. Nathan carefully helped him. Inside was an elegant leather wallet. No driver's license. No business cards. Only several credit cards made of black metal and a folded photograph. Nathan unfolded it. An older picture. The same man stood beside a smiling woman and a little girl who couldn't have been older than Lily. The edges were worn from years of being opened and closed. The stranger quietly watched Nathan looking at the photograph. His eyes filled with tears. My family. Nathan gently returned it to the wallet. We'll make sure they know where you are. The man slowly closed his eyes. Several long seconds passed. Too long. Nathan leaned closer again. Sir? No response. His pulse weakened beneath Nathan's fingertips. In the distance, sirens finally echoed through the cold afternoon. Relief should have come with that sound. Instead, Nathan looked at the dashboard clock inside his truck. His interview was in 26 minutes. Even if the ambulance arrived now, there was no possible way he could make it across town. Months of searching. Dozens of applications. One opportunity. Gone. He closed his eyes for a brief second before opening them again. Some losses, he realized, were easier to accept than abandoning a man who might never open his eyes again. The ambulance turned into the parking lot as Lily quietly slipped her small hand into her father's, either of them saying a single word while the life of a complete stranger hung in the balance. By the next morning, Nathan had lost more than a job interview. He just didn't know it yet. The emergency room waiting area smelled of coffee and antiseptic. Nathan sat beside Lily, still wearing the same jeans and sweater from the day before. His winter jacket had never been returned after he'd wrapped it around the unconscious stranger. Lily leaned against his shoulder, fighting sleep. Dad? Yeah? Do you think he's going to live? Nathan looked toward the closed hallway leading to intensive care. I hope so. That was the truth. He had no name. No family contact. No explanation for why the man had begged him not to call anyone. Only the memory of frightened eyes and a faded family photograph. A doctor finally approached. Mr. Brooks? Nathan stood immediately. The patient is stable. Relief quietly settled over him. He suffered an ischemic stroke. Fortunately, he received treatment quickly enough to avoid permanent brain damage. Nathan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The first hour made all the difference. The doctor continued. Whoever recognized the symptoms saved valuable time. Nathan simply nodded. He didn't think of himself as anyone's hero. He had only done what anyone should have done. After signing several witness forms for the hospital, he gathered Lily, thanked the staff, and walked toward the parking lot. His phone vibrated. The rehabilitation clinic. Nathan answered immediately. Hello, This is Nathan Brooks. A polite voice replied. Mr. Brooks, we waited as long as possible yesterday. Unfortunately, we had to move forward with another candidate. I understand. We appreciate your interest and wish you the best. The call ended. Nathan stared silently at the blank screen. Months of hope disappeared in less than 30 seconds. Lily looked up at him. Was that the new job? He forced a smile. They found someone else. She lowered her head. I'm sorry. Nathan knelt beside her. None of this is your fault. She threw her arms around his neck. For a few moments neither of them spoke. Across the city, events far beyond Nathan's imagination were unfolding. On the top floor of Whitmore Medical Systems headquarters, a tense silence filled the executive boardroom. An empty leather chair sat at the head of the polished conference table. Daniel Whitmore's chair. 24 hours had passed since anyone had seen the company's founder. His phone was unreachable. His driver had reported dropping him near St. Mary's Medical Center the previous afternoon before being dismissed unexpectedly. No one knew where he had gone afterward. Claire Donovan, the company's chief operating officer, stood before 12 anxious board members. We have searched every hospital in Franklin County, one executive said. No one under his name has been admitted. Another director folded his arms. The financial markets open in less than an hour. Our investors already know he's missing. We need an acting CEO. Claire remained remarkably calm despite the pressure building around her. Daniel has never disappeared without reason. A gray-haired board member leaned forward. Or perhaps he no longer intends to return. Those words lingered in the room. Outside the glass walls, hundreds of employees continued working without realizing that uncertainty had begun spreading through every department. Back across town, Nathan unlocked the front door of the small apartment he shared with Lily. 2 envelopes rested on the floor beneath the mail slot. The first contained an overdue rent notice. The second came from the utility company. Final warning. Nathan quietly placed both letters face down on the kitchen table before Lily could read them. He smiled anyway. How about pancakes for dinner? Lily smiled back. Neither of them noticed that, at that exact moment, the unconscious stranger whose life had crossed theirs for only a few minutes was beginning to wake up inside the intensive care unit, unaware that an entire corporation was searching desperately for him, while the man who had saved his life worried only about how to keep the lights on another month. The strongest people are often the ones who quietly decide not to ask who you are before deciding whether you deserve their help. Daniel Whitmore woke to the steady rhythm of a heart monitor. For several long moments he stared at the white ceiling without remembering where he was. His mouth felt dry. His head throbbed. When he tried to move, his right hand obeyed. His left arm barely responded. A wave of frustration crossed his face. The hospital room door opened. A neurologist stepped inside with a warm smile. Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. Daniel turned slowly. You've had a stroke, the doctor said gently. The good news is that you arrived quickly enough for treatment. We expect an excellent recovery. Daniel closed his eyes. Who brought me here? A man named Nathan Brooks. The name meant nothing to him. He recognized the warning signs almost immediately. Another 30 or 40 minutes could have changed everything. Daniel remained silent. The doctor continued. He stayed until we admitted you. And then? He left. Daniel frowned slightly. He didn't ask to see me? No. My family? You were carrying only a wallet and no identification. We contacted your office after confirming your identity. The doctor paused before adding one more sentence. He also missed an important appointment because he stayed with you. Daniel stared toward the window as snow drifted gently outside. A complete stranger had sacrificed something valuable without knowing who he was. That realization unsettled him more than the stroke itself. An hour later, Claire Donovan entered the room. She looked exhausted. Relief instantly softened her expression. You scared half the company to death. Daniel managed a faint smile. I suppose I owe everyone an apology. You owe me several. She pulled a chair beside the bed. The board wants an emergency vote tomorrow. Daniel looked away. I expected that. They think you're incapable of leading after the stroke. They may be right. Claire immediately shook her head. No. Daniel slowly lifted his weakened left hand. It trembled uncontrollably before falling back onto the blanket. They don't know this happened. They don't need to. I can barely move. You'll recover. I built a company that manufactures rehabilitation equipment. A sad smile crossed his face. And now I can't even sit up by myself. Silence settled between them. Finally, Daniel spoke again. I don't want anyone outside this room knowing I'm awake. Claire looked surprised. What? I need time. The board won't give you time. I didn't ask the board. She studied him carefully. You've never hidden from a fight before. No. This isn't about the company. He glanced toward his uncooperative hand. It's about whether I'm still the man who can lead it. Claire wanted to argue. Instead, she simply nodded. Back across town, Nathan's phone rang unexpectedly that afternoon. Mr. Brooks? This is he. My name is Karen. I'm calling from St. Mary's Rehabilitation Department. Nathan listened quietly. The patient you helped has been transferred to our neurological recovery unit. Nathan smiled. That's wonderful. There is something unusual. What is it? He specifically requested the physical therapist who recognized his stroke. Nathan blinked. There must be some mistake. He asked for you by name. Nathan laughed softly. I'm not employed by the hospital. I understand. But he refuses to begin rehabilitation until he speaks with you. Nathan looked around his small apartment. The overdue rent notice still rested beneath the salt shaker on the kitchen table. He had no steady income. No new job. Every hour mattered. Yet somewhere across town, a man he had saved was waiting for someone he barely knew. Nathan looked toward Lily, who was quietly coloring at the dining table. She smiled when she noticed him watching. Without saying another word, he picked up his car keys, unaware that he was driving toward the beginning of a friendship neither man could possibly have imagined. The first step toward healing is rarely physical. Sometimes it begins the moment two strangers stop pretending they have nothing to learn from each other. Nathan arrived at St. Mary's Rehabilitation Center carrying a worn canvas backpack filled with resistance bands and therapy tools he had purchased years earlier. A nurse greeted him with a smile. Mr. Brooks? That's me. He's been waiting all morning. Nathan followed her through a quiet hallway lined with large windows overlooking the snow-covered courtyard. She stopped outside room 312. Good luck. Nathan looked puzzled. For what? The nurse smiled knowingly. He's not an easy patient. Nathan chuckled softly. I've worked with teenagers after football injuries. She laughed. You'll understand in a minute. Nathan knocked gently before opening the door. Daniel Whitmore sat beside the window in a wheelchair. His posture remained dignified despite the weakness in his left side. When he turned, his expression softened. You came. Nathan smiled. I said I would. For several seconds neither man spoke. Finally Daniel broke the silence. I never thanked you. You don't need to. I do. Nathan pulled up a chair. I've spent most of my career helping people recover. This time I simply happened to be nearby. Daniel studied him. You lost something because of me. Nathan shrugged. I missed an interview. I'm sorry. So am I. The honesty surprised them both. Then Nathan smiled. But regrets don't change yesterday. Daniel looked toward the floor. No. They only waste today. The words lingered in the room. Nathan stood. Mind if I evaluate your movement? Daniel nodded. Nathan carefully guided him through several simple exercises. Lift your left hand. It rose only a few inches before trembling violently. Good. It wasn't good. It was better than yesterday. Daniel sighed. You don't know that. I can tell. Nathan demonstrated another movement. Again. Daniel repeated it. Sweat formed across his forehead. Again. 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 Each attempt ended with visible frustration. Finally, Daniel slammed his good hand against the wheelchair armrest. This is useless. Nathan remained calm. No. I built companies. You still did. I negotiated billion-dollar contracts. You still have. I made decisions for thousands of employees. Nathan quietly waited. Daniel's voice became almost a whisper. And now I can't even button my own shirt. The room fell silent. Nathan pulled another chair beside him instead of standing over him. My wife passed away 5 years ago. Daniel slowly looked up. I had never packed my daughter's lunch. I had never braided her hair. I had never cooked dinner more than twice. He smiled faintly. The first week after Emily died, Lily and I ate burned grilled cheese sandwiches 4 nights in a row. Daniel listened without interrupting. I kept thinking I wasn't capable. Were you? No. Nathan laughed softly. I became capable because Lily still needed breakfast the next morning. Daniel stared quietly through the window. So you're saying this gets easier? Nathan shook his head. No. I'm saying people grow into responsibilities they never asked for. Something changed in Daniel's expression. Not confidence. Not yet. But perhaps the first small willingness to believe recovery was still possible. As Nathan prepared to leave, Daniel spoke again. Will you come back tomorrow? Nathan hesitated only briefly. I don't know if I can afford to volunteer every day. Daniel nodded with understanding. Before Nathan reached the door, a neatly dressed woman entered carrying a folder. She stopped the moment she saw him. Claire Donovan. For a brief second, her eyes widened with unmistakable recognition. She glanced from Nathan to Daniel. So, she said quietly, you're the man everyone in our company has been searching for without even realizing it. True character is revealed when someone finally learns your name, and nothing about the way they treat you changes. Nathan looked at Claire Donovan with polite confusion. I'm sorry, he said. Have we met before? Claire studied him for another moment before extending her hand. I'm Claire Donovan. Nathan shook it. I work with Daniel. She intentionally left out her title. Daniel quietly watched the exchange from his wheelchair. Claire turned toward him. The board meeting has been moved to tomorrow morning. Daniel sighed. I expected as much. They're preparing an interim leadership vote. Nathan sensed the conversation had become private. I should probably go. No, Daniel said gently. Please stay. Nathan sat back down. Claire opened the folder she had been carrying. The company has already lost nearly 4% of its market value. Suppliers are asking questions. Investors want answers. Daniel remained calm. They'll survive one more day. Claire looked directly at him. They're beginning to doubt that you will. Silence settled over the room. Nathan pretended to study the therapy notes, lying beside the bed. Corporate politics had nothing to do with him. Finally, Daniel changed the subject. Nathan. Yes? Will you continue helping with my therapy? Nathan hesitated. I'd like to. But I need work. Daniel nodded. Of course. Nathan smiled apologetically. My daughter depends on me. I can't spend every day volunteering. Claire quietly observed the conversation. There was no calculation in Nathan's voice. No expectation of reward. Only simple honesty. She reached into her purse and removed a business card. My office occasionally hires rehabilitation consultants. Nathan accepted it. I appreciate that. There aren't any guarantees. I understand. But I'd like you to send me your resume. Nathan thanked her before slipping the card into his wallet. He had no idea that the company listed on the card employed more than 12,000 people across the country. After Nathan left, Claire closed the door behind him. You still haven't told him. Daniel slowly shook his head. He doesn't need to know. He probably will. Not yet. Claire folded her arms. Why? Daniel looked toward the hallway where Nathan had disappeared. Because I wanted to know who he was before he knew who I was. And? Daniel smiled faintly. I've learned enough. Meanwhile, Nathan drove home through light snowfall with Lily beside him. Did your patient do better today? She asked. He lifted his arm. Really? A little. She grinned. That's still progress. Nathan laughed. You sound like a therapist. I learned from the best. Those simple words warmed him more than the truck's struggling heater. When they reached their apartment, another envelope waited beneath the door. Nathan opened it slowly. The landlord was giving him 7 days to bring the rent current. He quietly folded the notice before Lily could read it. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Nathan sat alone at the kitchen table updating his resume for what felt like the 100th time. He stared at the blank section labeled Current Employment. There was nothing to write. Across the city, Daniel asked a nurse for his phone for the first time since waking. Ignoring dozens of missed calls, he dialed only one number. Claire. I'm here. I've made a decision. I'm listening. Cancel tomorrow's interim vote. You can't stop the board without appearing. I know. Claire waited. Daniel's voice grew steady despite the weakness in his body. If I walk into that boardroom before I'm ready, they'll only see a patient. He paused before adding quietly. But if Nathan Brooks can believe I'm capable of standing again before he even knows who I am, then I owe it to him, and to myself, to prove that he's right. The greatest sacrifices are often invisible because the people making them never expect anyone to notice. Nathan's phone rang just after sunrise. He recognized the number immediately. Mr. Brooks. Karen from St. Mary's Rehabilitation Department said warmly. Daniel is scheduled for his first assisted walking session this morning. Nathan smiled. That's wonderful. He asked if you could be here. Nathan glanced at the kitchen calendar. Another interview. This one was for a physical therapy assistant position at a community clinic across town. It wasn't perfect. But it was work. The interview began in less than an hour. He closed his eyes for a moment. When does his session start? In 45 minutes? Nathan thanked her and ended the call. Lily walked into the kitchen carrying her backpack. Was it the hospital? He nodded. Your friend? Nathan smiled. I think so. She noticed the hesitation on his face. Don't you have another interview today? I do. So, what are you going to do? Nathan looked through the frosted kitchen window. The answer should have been obvious. Rent was overdue. The electricity bill remained unpaid. Every responsible father should choose the interview. Yet he remembered Daniel's frustration. The trembling hand. The quiet fear hidden behind determined eyes. Nathan finally picked up his keys. I'm going to the hospital first. Lily smiled. I knew you would. You did? You always help people. She shrugged as if it were the simplest thing in the world. I learned that from you. An hour later, Daniel stood between two parallel bars in the rehabilitation gym. His legs shook uncontrollably. A therapist adjusted the safety harness around his waist. You don't have to rush. Daniel barely heard him. His attention remained fixed on the doorway. When Nathan entered, Daniel's expression immediately relaxed. You came. I said I'd try. Daniel smiled. I wasn't sure. Nathan stepped beside him. You've already done the hardest part. Which was? Deciding not to quit. Daniel looked down at his unsteady feet. I'm not sure about that. Nathan nodded toward the bars. Let's find out. Slowly, Daniel shifted his weight forward. One step. Pain shot through his weakened side. Another step. His left knee buckled. The therapist reached forward instinctively. Nathan quietly raised one hand. Wait. Daniel looked at him. You've got this. Daniel inhaled deeply. Then took another step. And another. Only 4 feet. But it felt like crossing an ocean. When he finally reached the end of the bars, everyone in the room applauded softly. Daniel lowered himself into the wheelchair, exhausted. I walked. Nathan smiled. You did. For the first time. For the first time. Claire had been watching silently from the hallway. She glanced at her watch. Nathan's interview had already begun. He had missed it. Again. Later that afternoon, Claire found Nathan preparing to leave. You were supposed to be somewhere else today, weren't you? Nathan looked surprised. How did you know? The clinic called. They were hoping you were just running late. Nathan smiled faintly. I wasn't. You've lost another opportunity. I suppose I have. Claire studied him carefully. Were you ever going to tell Daniel? Telling him would only make him feel guilty. She stared at him for several long seconds. Then she quietly asked, Do you know what company Daniel works for? Nathan laughed. Honestly? I've never asked. Claire slowly shook her head in disbelief. Most people would have searched his name after the first visit. Most people would have tried to discover what they could gain. Nathan had simply chosen to care. As he walked toward the parking lot, Claire watched him disappear into the falling snow. She finally understood why Daniel refused to reveal his identity. For the first time in many years, someone had treated him like a human being before treating him like a title. And in that simple act of kindness, Nathan Brooks had already given Daniel something no amount of wealth had ever been able to buy. Some truths arrive like thunder. Others enter so quietly that they change your life before you even realize you've heard them. 3 days later, Daniel stood without assistance. Only for a few seconds. But it was enough. The therapists applauded. Nathan smiled with genuine pride. I told you your body would remember. Daniel laughed softly. I wasn't sure my confidence would. As they finished the morning session, Claire entered carrying a neatly pressed navy suit. It's time. Daniel looked at the suit, then at Nathan. I suppose it is. Nathan frowned. Time for what? Claire answered gently. To go back to work. Nathan nodded. Well, I wish you the best. Daniel hesitated. Would you come with me? Nathan looked surprised. I don't think I'd belong wherever you're going. I'd appreciate the company. Nathan checked his watch. He had nowhere else to be. All right. An hour later, Nathan pulled his aging pickup truck into the underground parking garage of an enormous glass building downtown. He stared upward. This is where you work? Daniel smiled. Yes. Nathan whistled quietly. Looks expensive. Claire couldn't help smiling. You have no idea. They entered through a private elevator. Employees immediately straightened as Daniel walked past. Some looked stunned. Others whispered in disbelief. Nathan noticed the reactions. Your coworkers seem happy to see you. No one answered. The elevator stopped at the executive floor. Large wooden doors stood open ahead. Voices echoed from inside. The shareholders deserve stable leadership. We cannot wait any longer. The company needs a permanent decision. Daniel took a slow breath. Then walked forward. Nathan instinctively followed. The boardroom fell completely silent. Nearly 20 executives stood at once. Several looked as though they had seen a ghost. One elderly board member spoke first. Daniel. Another whispered, Mr. Whitmore. Nathan stopped walking. His eyes moved from one face to another, then toward the company logo mounted behind the chairman's seat. Whitmore Medical Systems. His breathing slowed. He turned toward Daniel. Whitmore. Daniel met his eyes quietly. I'm Daniel Whitmore. No one spoke. Nathan searched his memory. The black cards. The expensive sedan. Claire's business card. The missing CO mentioned on every local news broadcast during the past week. Everything suddenly fit together. You. He struggled to finish the sentence. You're the CEO? Daniel nodded. Yes. Nathan simply stared. Finally he laughed once, almost in disbelief. I've been telling one of the most successful executives in America how to practice standing up. A few nervous chuckles spread around the room. Daniel smiled warmly. And you were right every single time. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore, we're in the middle of a leadership vote. I know. Daniel stepped to the head of the conference table. His movements remained slower than before. But his voice carried the same quiet authority. I won't keep you long. He looked around the room. For years, I believed leadership came from intelligence, strategy, and discipline. He paused. My stroke taught me something different. His eyes rested on Nathan. The person who changed my life wasn't a board member. Wasn't an investor. Wasn't a consultant. He was a struggling single father who missed 2 job interviews to help someone he believed was simply another human being. The room turned toward Nathan. He wished he could disappear. Daniel continued. I stand here today because compassion reached me before ambition ever could. Silence filled the boardroom. Then Daniel looked directly at Nathan. I never properly thanked you. Nathan shook his head. You already did. Daniel smiled. No. I've only just begun. Kindness is never measured by what it costs the person receiving it. It is measured by what it changes inside the person giving it away. A week after the board meeting, Nathan's life looked almost exactly the same. The rent was still overdue. His pickup truck still rattled every morning. He still packed Lily's lunch before sunrise and searched job listings after she left for school. The only difference was that Daniel now called every evening. Sometimes they talked about rehabilitation. Sometimes about Lily's homework. Sometimes they spoke about nothing important at all. Their friendship had quietly grown beyond the day that had brought them together. One snowy afternoon, Daniel invited Nathan and Lily to the headquarters of Whitmore Medical Systems. I have something I'd like you to see. Nathan hesitated. You've already done enough. Daniel smiled. Trust me. When they arrived, they were led, not to the executive floor, but to a large auditorium filled with hospital workers, therapists, nurses, physicians, and community volunteers. A simple banner hung across the stage. Community Care Initiative. Nathan whispered to Lily. I think we're early. Daniel walked onto the stage using only a cane. The audience rose in applause. He waited until the room became quiet. When I suffered a stroke, he began, I discovered that recovery is not built by machines alone. It is built by people. He paused before continuing. I was fortunate enough to meet someone who reminded me that compassion should never depend on a person's title, income, or influence. Nathan lowered his eyes. He already knew where this was going. Daniel smiled toward him. Nathan Brooks, would you and Lily please join me? The audience applauded as they walked to the stage. Nathan looked visibly uncomfortable. Daniel placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I once believed our company's greatest investment was technology. I was wrong. He turned toward the audience. Beginning today, Whitmore Medical Systems will establish the Brooks Family Recovery Foundation. A large screen illuminated behind them. The foundation would provide rehabilitation scholarships, emergency family assistance, transportation for patients, and caregiver support for single parents struggling to remain beside loved ones during recovery. Nathan stared at the screen. His voice barely escaped. You named it after us? Daniel nodded. Because none of this would exist without you. Nathan shook his head. I didn't save you for this. I know. Then why? Daniel smiled with quiet gratitude. Because gratitude should create opportunities for others, not just rewards for one person. He reached into his jacket and handed Nathan a folder. Inside was not a luxury car. Not a mansion. Not a fortune. It contained an employment agreement. Director of Community Rehabilitation Outreach. Flexible hours. Excellent benefits. Enough time to remain the father Lily needed. Nathan looked at Daniel. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep helping people. Nathan smiled through tears. I was planning to. Months later, the foundation had already helped hundreds of families receive therapy they otherwise could never have afforded. Daniel continued his recovery. Nathan built programs that connected volunteers with patients leaving hospitals alone. And every Friday afternoon, regardless of schedules or titles, two friends shared coffee in the rehabilitation gym where everything had begun. One had learned how to walk again. The other had finally been given the chance to keep walking the path he had chosen long before anyone knew his name. Because in the end, the miracle was never that a CO survived a stroke. The miracle was that one ordinary single father proved that the smallest act of kindness can travel farther than wealth, farther than power, and sometimes even farther than hope itself.